Well, good afternoon. I want to welcome you to the broadcast. Thank you for joining. It's Friday. How about that? And we're doing live streaming, our second day in a row. It's kind of cold and snowy out here in southeast Missouri and in many other parts of where we provide our classes. But hey, we can still study thanks to today's technology. We are broadcasting live actually on LinkedIn and on YouTube. In fact, go out and subscribe to our YouTube channel and click that bell, just like we showed you right there. Each and every time we go live, you'll be notified. And subscribe to our channel. Check us out. We're on YouTube, and you can just search for Global Real Estate School. So again, thanks so much for joining. My name's John Mayfield, the Real Estate Tech Guy. And as I was mentioning, we're actually streaming not only on YouTube, two YouTube channels, my Business Tech Guy channel and our Global Real Estate School channel, but we're also streaming on Facebook, my personal Facebook page. I haven't been getting on Facebook a whole lot the last couple of weeks. So I know I'm streaming now, so maybe that's my chance to participate on Facebook. I've been on Facebook since 2006. Right after it was first launched kind of nationwide, and I just needed a break from social media. But we're broadcasting there. We're also on our Global Real Estate School Facebook page. We are broadcasting on LinkedIn. Had several people on LinkedIn who said hi. And you can, by the way, type in the chat, whichever platform you're on. And yes, for those Twitter folks, we're broadcasting live on Twitter as well. So just say hi to us, ask a question, because we're going to talk about information to help you pass the real estate exam. However, if you are a real estate professional and you're thinking to yourself, hey, John, I've already taken the real estate test. Do I need to watch your live streams? And the answer is yes, you do. And I say that because really, looking back at my real estate career, and I've had my real estate license since the ripe old age of 18, 1978. I've got to tell you, when my career really started to take off and blossom was when I started learning and understanding what I learned in pre-licensed real estate school, but how to explain that to consumers. And so if you haven't been back to school for a while, these videos will be helpful for you. I guarantee you. It helped me to be able to give examples and to share and explain to the clients and customers I was working with. So it's all right for you to hang out with us from time to time. And yes, we also do some marketing tips and some tools that I'll show you how you can benefit from that as well. So in fact, that's a tool I'll tell you about a little later on how I'm doing my broadcast and live streaming. Perhaps we'll give you a little sneak peek at that and go over that with you. But we need to talk about agency. We talked about agency yesterday. We're going to get right into it. And this is my interactive Dell smartboard. You might say, why did you need to go out and purchase an interactive smartboard? And the reason is, I want my students to be able to learn and have fun with any of my real estate courses, whether it's pre-license or continuing education. And by using something such as the smartboard, I can communicate with you, I can write on the board, and we can make it as fun and interactive as possible. So we're going to be right over here on the interactive board right now. And just kind of to recap where we're in chapter 10 of my book, my real estate book that I wrote for the course. And chapter 10 is on agency. And as you can see from the board here, agency encompasses a lot of different topics. A lot of different things, I should say. You know, the agency topic is a big umbrella of stuff you need to know for the real estate exam. And I really wanted to stress upon you yesterday when we spoke about agency that agency really carries some big obligations. And when I say big obligations, what I'm talking about is the fact that you have some what we call fiduciary obligations to the client, to the person you get the listing agreement with. And as you can see here on the board, and I'm just going to use a different color so that we can kind of understand some of the items we were talking about. But when you go out to get a listing agreement, sometimes referred to as a seller's agency agreement, and don't forget, it could also be a landlord. You could be representing a landlord to rent their property for them. That creates an agency. And I don't want you to forget that buyer's agency agreements and tenant, someone that wants to purchase a property, if they sign an agency agreement with you, then you've created this word or this thing, you become an agent, and you've created this word called agency, and along with agency, we have what are called fiduciary obligations. I know I've got a lot of stuff going on the board there. And so what do we mean by a fiduciary obligation? Let me just kind of come over here and let's just re-talk about this. We know that there's this acronym called COLD, C-O-A-L-D. An acronym means that each one of these letters represents a word. And so the first C represents care. Remember, you're going to have to take good care in pricing the property and getting the room measurements and verifying information. The second one is obedience, and I'm just going to put O-B-E-D and abbreviate that. But obedience, you have to be obedient, and there was a key here, if you remember that, to legal, any legal request that your client is requiring. And then the A was for accounting. We have to account for all of those documents and all of those, whoops, I went to the wrong, I need to go back and tell my tiny cam it followed me around here, and so I'm going to get it reset up, and hopefully it'll move with me now. You probably got a shot of the other part of the room there, but there we go. So I should be back now. I had to walk around because one of my lights was blinking and I had to turn it off. And thank goodness I'm using this Rode wireless microphone that I can walk anywhere in the area of my office here and talk to you even though I have my board up. And so I walked around, the tiny cam went around, but it didn't come back around this way. So now we're good to go. So a little side detour there for just a moment. But accounting, you have to account for valuables. And that was one of the things I just really kind of wanted to talk to you a little bit about, was the fact that as real estate professionals, a lot of times we're given keys. Recently I was given a survey from one of my clients, and she said, "John, that's the only survey I have left." And so, that's an important, valuable document, and I had to keep hold of that and make sure that I didn't lose that. So it could be keys, it could be photographs that they give you, it could be a survey, lots of different things that could fall in, but we need to account for all of those items that were provided. And then we talked about loyalty. Remember that? You have to be loyal to your client. And disclosure. And so I gave you an example of loyalty and disclosure when an agent in my area basically told me some information about their client, saying, well, they're making 2 house payments, things are a little tough for them, and bring me an offer. Now, if that other agent's client did not give them permission to give that information, you can't give that out, okay? And so once I had that information, once it was disclosed to me, I have to do what? I have to disclose it. I have to be loyal to my client and disclose that information. So all of those things kind of fall in. A lot of times they like questions on the exam. They like to set a scenario up and say, a basement's leaking, or the agent found out about something. And you have to look at that question and ask yourself, well, is that a material defect in the property that I should, do I disclose that to a client or not? Some of the challenging ones actually come up when we have these questions about Megan's Law or sex offenders who might live in a neighborhood. Is that your responsibility as an agent to disclose that information to your client? There's a lot of debate on that topic, and I'm not going to get into that here today, but those can be very challenging questions. So you have to read those questions very carefully and make sure you understand what they're wanting you to answer. But this comes about when we enter into this agency relationship. So I'm just going to highlight this because I think this is important. When an agency relationship is created, the broker, the agent, is said to have a fiduciary relationship with the principal. This is where COALD comes into reality for the real estate broker. And this, I think, is very important for you to understand, and I would definitely write this down right here. This fiduciary, this agency, puts the agent in a position of what? Trust and obedience to the principal. So we're going to kind of look at this right now, and this is what I want to kind of focus on for us, is the typical real estate transaction. So, I'm just going to draw this out, and I'm going to kind of go back in the days when I was first licensed as an agent, but this would be the broker. And then remember that underneath the broker, there will be agents. So I'm just going to put A for agents, okay? So in my office, this was me. I could put John Mayfield. And these were some of my agents down here. Had a guy that worked for me, Fiddle, great guy. Loved him. He was like a dad to me and sold lots of real estate for my mother and for me. And he and I used to love to go have Mexican food at Casa Gallardo, which was a real cool restaurant in St. Louis. But that was Fiddle, and this is Clyde, and Ed was one of my agents that worked for me, and Mary, and I had a whole bunch of agents. But these are all of my agents down here that worked for me. Now, let's just say Fiddle, because he would. Fiddle went out and listed a property. We called him Fiddle. I don't even think he played the fiddle, but that's what everybody called him. And again, he was a great guy. And I reminisce sometimes. I ask myself sometimes, I have to say, with all the technology and DocuSign and lock boxes, and I'm like, man, sometimes I wish Fiddle could see that stuff. Or I think back about people like Helen Young, who used to work for me, and people who were in the business back when I first started. They would just be amazed at the way technology has changed our business. But anyway, Fiddle has gone out to get a listing here, okay? So he's listed a house, and in this example, we have, let's just say, Bob and Sue, friends of mine, and Fiddle's going to list Bob and Sue's house. So one of the things that, in order to make that listing happen, is a listing, is a listing agreement, which is a contract, right? And when Bob and Sue sign that listing agreement, this has now created what? We have this new thing that's been created called agency. I like that little sparkling because this guy wanted to kind of like give off this, this new things happened here. And it's created an agency. But now here's the interesting part. Remember, I talked about this yesterday. The listing agreement is between who? It's always between the broker and the client, or sometimes we refer to them as the principal. Okay? So this is a test question right here, maybe two test questions, and you need to know this. And I told you this yesterday, and I want to make sure that everybody understands it. Listing agreements or buyer's agency agreements or landlord agency agreements or tenant agency agreements, any of those types of agreements are between who? They are between the broker and the client. It's funny, agents will call me up all the time and they're like, I was working for broker so-and-so and I had a listing and they won't let me have it and now they've got it under contract and they won't pay me a commission. That's not right. Well, first of all, you probably should have read the policy and procedures manual very closely at the office because I'm sure somewhere in the policy and procedures it says if you quit or leave or we have to terminate you, your listings stay with us. Why? Because those agreements are between the broker and the client. I mentioned to you, you're going to see this on the exam, and I remember this one question that I saw, and I mean, you felt so sorry for the agent. I mean, your heart just went out to them. And you read this scenario, and they're asking you, well, what happens? And you're like, well, that's not right. By golly, that agent ought to get that based on that story I just read. And the answer is sorry. Agency contracts are between the client, the seller, or the buyer, if there's a buyer's agency agreement, and the broker, not the salesperson, okay? So just want to make sure you know that. You'll see it on the test, so nobody's going to miss that from Global Real Estate School. So you're thinking to yourself, well, wait a minute, John. Fiddle got this listing. Wouldn't that contract be between him and the client? The answer is no. Remember, Fiddle worked for me. So that agreement was between me and the client. Now, Fiddle and all of these agents down here still have, they still are agents, maybe a sub-agent in this, we could call it that. Fiddle would be a sub-agent, but he is of me, but he is still, what I want you to understand is this, he still has those fiduciary obligations. Okay? He still has to abide by the agency or cold. Remember that? So Fiddle still has this, and I still have this. So not only, am I responsible for care, obedience, accounting, loyalty, disclosure, but so is Fiddle, okay? Fiddle got the listing. That listing is between me, the broker, and the client, but we both have these fiduciary obligations. So anything we might know that comes into play that's a material fact, we have to tell Bob and Sue. They're our clients. Good example, I had a lady one time that, an older lady, and this was back in the 80s when interest rates were very high. Interest rates, believe it or not, at one time got up to 19, 20%. And so one of the ways we figured out how to survive back then as real estate brokers is we would encourage sellers, if they didn't owe any money on their property, to finance it. So this lady that I had her home listed, she owned it free and clear. Interest rates are 18, 19%. Nobody's wanting to purchase. And we just got in the habit of saying, hey, what if we had someone that could pay 10% down? That covers my marketing fee, and that gives you a little bit of money, and then you'll receive monthly payments, and then at the end of 2 or 3 years, we'll have a balloon note, and at the end of 2 or 3 years, they'll have to go out and refinance the home, and hopefully interest rates will have come down by then. And the news media went berserk about all of that because it was a big practice around the U.S., and everyone said the real estate market was going to blow up. It never did. It worked just fine, and that's how we survived. So this client of mine, remember, she's a client, so I have the fiduciary obligations: care, obedience, accounting, loyalty, disclosure. She's going to finance it to these buyers. They both had a job. He had a job. They had a credit score. We got all, ran their credit. That was back in the days when we could run credit on people from our real estate office. And all of that information, was checked out and fine. We go back to look at the home a second time. Now, this was before buyer's agency or dual agency, so I'm just working for the seller. And he tells me he thinks he'll be able to make the payment okay because he got fired from his job and he's looking for a new job. Now, not only were interest rates very high back then, but there were a lot of people unemployed. Now, at that point, remember, my client is financing the note. She's actually being the bank. I now have information about the buyer because this was owner financing. I now have information about the buyer which has changed. They're no longer employed. He's no longer employed. I don't think she was working at the time, but it was a big deal. And my heart sunk because we're getting ready to close. Now, I could have just not said anything. We're closing tomorrow. How much is $80,000 times 6% divided by, I mean, because back then, an $80,000 was a big deal. And I'm like, I'm going to make about $2,400 or $2,500. I can't remember. It was a good check. And my client will never know about it. Do I need to tell her? Yeah, I do. And why? Because I have a fiduciary obligation. I have this duty of disclosing any information that I find out about. And so I told her about the situation, and she said, that's okay, I'm going to go ahead and finance it anyway. And so what I want you to understand is, in the example I showed you, and I'll put that back on the board here, the example I'm showing you here is that both myself as a broker, and that listing agreement was between me and the client, the seller, but not only do I have a fiduciary obligation, but Fiddle, who got that listing, he too would have a fiduciary obligation with those people. Now, it gets more complicated than this, and that's why we're going to take it really slow going through all of this agency stuff. But it gets more complicated than this, and I want to show you this. Remember, I have all these other agents working for me. I'm going to make this a little bigger. Actually, I'm going to make this purple, and we'll go up a little bit bigger here. What about, remember I said I have Mary, and I have Clyde, and Ed, and Darlene. I could go down the list of all these people who used to work for me. And who do they work for? Answer is, it depends, okay? In Missouri, and so what I want you to understand, but it does depend because in Missouri we have things called designated agency. Now, not every state has different agency laws, and we cover this in the courses that we offer at Global Real Estate School. But it does depend because in the old days, let me just go back to the old days for a minute. In the old days, I'm going to go back to the 1980s when that situation came up. All of these people were subagents of Bob and Sue. So everybody in my office had an agency relationship to the seller. This all kind of changed as time went on, and you might say, and I don't want to confuse you, I just want you to stay with me here for just a minute. This started to become a problem back in the 80s and the 90s. That's why buyer's agency was kind of introduced. And here's why it became a problem. And I saw this in my own office with 50 agents. You have Fiddle, who just went out and listed a property for Bob and Sue, the sellers, in our example, right? Now, let's just say you out there in our streaming world for the course, so you also work for me, okay? You and Fiddle are kind of friends. You know each other in the office. You know, you run into each other at the coffee pot or when we have sales meetings, and depending on the size of the office, but you both are friends. You like Fiddle too, and in fact, you guys go to Casa Gallardo as well. We don't have Casa Gallardo anymore. That's a shame. My St. Louis people, probably, some of you may remember that, but you know Fiddle and your friends, right? Now, Fiddle listed Bob and Sue's house. He's very good friends with them. You have some buyers come in the office, and they want to go look at homes. And they're very good friends of yours. So they want to look at Bob and Sue's house that Fiddle has listed. Now, remember, you and Fiddle both work for me. You're both in my office. You've never met Bob and Sue. You have no idea who these people are. You know Fiddle, but you don't know Bob and Sue. They're just complete strangers. But your buyers are very good friends of yours. In fact, you guys go to Casa Gallardo and eat, and you go to ball games with your kids, and they're your good friends. So you're showing your good friends a total stranger's home that Fiddle has listed in your office, and your good friends want to buy that home, and they make an offer. And what happens here is this. You're supposed to be what? Remember, I just drew this. You're supposed to be a subagent for Bob and Sue. And if you're supposed to be a subagent for Bob and Sue, you're supposed to have what? Fiduciary obligations to Bob and Sue. I know I'm drawing a lot on the line here, or on there. Hopefully you're staying with me. The problem is, you make an offer, Fiddle comes back with a counteroffer, and you and Fiddle, who are friends, and not that you're physically fighting, but there's some tension on trying to make this thing work. You're kind of trying to beat Fiddle down on what you think's wrong with the house and Bob and Sue and making comments, and Fiddle's trying to represent Bob and Sue. And why is that happening? Because Fiddle's very good friends with Bob and Sue. He knows them. He's good friends with them. You do not know Bob and Sue, but you're a subagent for them. But you're very good friends with these people over here. And so, maybe Fiddle says, well, they might come down $1,000. When I presented the counteroffer, they're like, if I could get this much, I'll take it. And so now you run back and tell your people, but you're a subagent for Bob and Sue, and you owe care, obedience, accounting, loyalty, and disclosure to Bob and Sue. But you just went and told your people, I think if you just make this offer, we can make it work. And now your loyalty has shifted from Bob and Sue to your friends. Now, keep in mind, I'm going back into the 1980s before buyer's agency and because in those days, your friends that you showed the house to, they would have just been a customer, a third party, no representation. And because and this is what you have to understand, because Fiddle got that listing agreement, and our office was just one blanket policy, everyone in the office, remember, has a fiduciary obligation to Bob and Sue, but people weren't practicing that as they should have. I hope that makes sense. And so we started seeing buyer agency come about. And so that even gets more complicated because and this is in Missouri, and every state, again, has different agency laws, but in Missouri it got more complicated because I saw the same problems, but if you don't have what is called designated agency in Missouri, then you kind of run into that same scenario I just went through. Because when someone takes a listing in your office, and you do not have designated agency in Missouri, every agent in the office is a subagent of that client, which means you owe a care, obedience, accounting, loyalty, disclosure, fiduciary obligation. Same way with the buyer's agent. And so now you're in a disclosed dual agency situation, and the easiest way I found to get around that was to offer what is called designated agency. So in that example, I would designate Fiddle to be the seller's agent, and I would designate you to be the buyer's agent, and then you would owe your fiduciary obligations to your client, the buyers, and not to Bob and Sue, and Fiddle would owe fiduciary obligations to Bob and Sue and not to your clients. Does that make sense? And so and there are more pieces to the puzzle when we talk about that, but I hope I'm trying to lay this foundation a brick at a time so you kind of know this, because this gets very, very deep. But once you understand it, it makes perfect sense. You just need to know, who am I representing? Who's my client? And that's the person you enter into an agency relationship with, a written agency relationship with. That's your client, and you owe them the fiduciary obligations of care, obedience, accounting, loyalty, and disclosure. But remember, the broker also is going to owe those same fiduciary obligations, because that agreement is really between the broker and the client, even though you went out to get the listing, okay? Now, question comes up, well, what if you have a designated buyer's agent and a designated seller's agent? How's the broker working that? Well, we're going to get to that, so don't worry, okay? So just want to kind of build this one layer at a time. All right, we're not going to probably go a whole lot more today, because I know this gets a little bit complicated, but I want to bring this up here. And I'm going to go out and check to see if we have any questions. In fact, I probably should do that now. And while I do that, I'm going to put up my global support page because I want to remind you, this is the coolest thing I think, is that we do have a support for you. And Karen says, your YouTube videos helped me pass my exam. Thank you so much. I really appreciate that. And I'm also seeing someone from Russia or somewhere saying something. But anyway, feel free if you want to make a comment. If you have a question, just let us know. We'd love to see those I'd love to answer those for you. All right, so I'm going to come back over here to but we've got it's Global Real Estate School Support. You can check that out, and actually it'll be good to help you out in that respect, okay? All right, so we're going to go back over here now and just want to kind of bring you up to speed on a few things. So in the textbook, we do talk about an agent, principal, client. Now, when I say principal and client, these are normally the same person, okay? The person who hires the agent, the principal is the one who actually does the hiring. I just wanted both of these because you never know if they refer to them as a client or the principal. I just want you to be sure and understand that. So we have an agent. We know that's the broker, right? And then we have this customer, the third party in the transaction. And notice they have no representation whatsoever. And then we have a subagent. This would be another broker from a different real estate agency, and the same rules apply to subagents as well. I need to double check because the subagents can also be other agents in your office, but this is important for you to remember this here, right here. The same rules of agency apply to subagents as well. So today, I do not offer subagency in my office or, when I take listing agreements. And the reason being is I'm responsible as the agent for any subagent's actions. And if you came to show one of my properties, I don't know you. And even though you might work for another company or I don't know your broker, I don't want to take on that liability and risk allowing you to be a subagent, because if you mess up or do something wrong, then I could be in trouble. And somebody says, what do you mean by that? Well, let's just face it. People can do deceitful things. I'm not saying you would do that, but what if you had a listing and your clients, the sellers, clearly disclosed on the seller's disclosure that there had been a fire in the home or the basement floods when there's heavy rains? You want people to know that. And the subagent, remember, you're going to be liable for their actions because they have to apply by all the same rules. They see that and they go in and doctor that seller's disclosure up, or that's why, they use whiteout or recreate a different paper or whatever and change that. Well, what if, and that's fraud. Would people do that? We hear about weird things all the time, don't we? But if they're a subagent, you're going to be liable and responsible for them. So my preference is I don't want you to be a subagent for me. In fact, I won't pay a fee to any subagent. I will share part of my commission with you and pay you a fee to help sell my property, but I want you to be a buyer's agent and I want you to represent the buyer, not me, okay? So that's kind of how we get around that and do that. And it just works well for everybody. But you need to know the definitions, how this all works right here, and we've got those in there. So we're going to go into types of agency, and I want to go a little bit longer. And again, I want to try to keep these within that 45 minute mark, so we're coming right up on that. But some types of agencies, very important for you to look at here. first of all, you do need to know there are what we call a general agent and we have special agents. What's the difference between a general agent and a special agent? Well, you can see here this type of agent, a general agent, will oversee many things for the principal. And I put right here, it's kind of like a property manager. It's a good example. And then we go on to say that this type of agent could be considered an attorney in fact created through a general power of attorney given to the agent by the principal. So again, general agent, I would just kind of remind myself that it is for many things, okay? Property manager. A special agent, you're going to see, this is the second type of agent that we're going to look at, and the broker is really only being involved in one specific act or business transaction. And so the example would be, in this example, for instance, the broker is to find a ready, willing, and able buyer for the principal's real estate. Again, we're just doing one act. This would be many acts or functions. So only one act for a special. And that's an example of a listing agreement. We want you to sell my house, and I'm going to list it with you. I'd like for you to sell my house, one specific act, okay? That's all you're doing in that example. If you were a property manager and you were hiring people and taking care of doing, a limited power of attorney for some functions, that's an example of a general agent. You're doing more than one item. So they will ask you one of those questions on the test, so make sure you know that. Now, let's go back over here and just take a couple more. We have what is called a universal agent. And this is a full power of attorney. I'm going to just circle that right there. A universal agent actually is conducting all of the acts of someone because they've been maybe incapacitated, they're in an automobile accident, and it's normally court appointed, as you can see here, for a universal agent. And then there are a couple of other types of agency agreements, and I'm going to actually talk about these on our next broadcast, but hopefully this just brought you a little closer into understanding agency and that fiduciary obligation, and we'll keep building on this. Again, agency's a big part of the test, and I don't want to overwhelm you with information, but we'll keep moving forward. My plan is to try to do another live stream tomorrow afternoon sometime, so not certain if you will be available, but hey, let me show you something very quickly. If you go to, actually a couple of things, but if you go to our YouTube channel, let me just pull this up very quickly here, and I'm going to, actually, if you just go to Global Real Estate School, right over here, we have Global Real Estate TV. If you click on that, it brings up our YouTube channel right here. There's yesterday's study session. I believe that was it. No, that's not it. Alex I think she might be watching. We'll make sure yesterday's gets tagged, but you can always come out here and watch those here. But if you go to our YouTube channel as well, and you just type in Global Real Estate School, and also be sure and do what? Click the bell, click it, there you go, and you'll be able to subscribe and you'll be notified whenever we go live. So it's Global Real Estate School. Just go out to YouTube, There it is. There I am, 50 pounds heavier. Back when I was 50 pounds heavier. I've lost some weight and I feel good. And we want you to subscribe. We want to get that number up. We're at 1,690 subscribers. I want to see that get up to 2,000. You can see we're actually live here, and I need to fix that. It's not the winter cash giveaway, so I will get that fixed. I know what the problem is there, but I'll take care of that. But go out, subscribe to our YouTube channel. Check us out. We are on Facebook. We're on Instagram. You can go wherever and find us. We're even on Amazon, but if I said her name, she'll think I'm talking to her right now. But you can actually listen to us on Amazon through our app. We have some great resources at Global Real Estate School. We've got a new training program to help you make money after you get your license. I'm so excited about it. And we're going to do a webinar sometime in the next few weeks. And it's going to be a free session on business planning. I'm going to do that at no charge. So we'd love for you to check that out as well. I'm going to very quickly see if we have any comments. Thank you, Karen. Karen said I look good too. So thank you. I appreciate that. That makes me feel good, Karen. You've made my day. Thank you. So anyway, but appreciate your business, your referrals. We appreciate your support. We want you to pass the real estate exam on the first time. And as I think it was Karen said, she passed her test and she watched my YouTube videos. And it's so important that you use the resources and watch these YouTube videos because they will help you. And I just want to try to bring the live classroom to your computer so you can still do this from home, but still kind of have fun and enjoy the course. So, well, as always, thank you for watching. I appreciate your business and your support, and I hope you go out and make it a great day.